Right now, somewhere in the Pacific, a U.S. aircraft carrier is fighting waves the height of 5-story buildings, $19 billion in assets, 5,000 lives. And the mission doesn't stop because the ocean is angry. When a Category 5 storm forms, commercial ships run for port. Destroyers retreat. Even military vessels avoid it. But carriers don't have that option. In 2019, the USS Theodore Roosevelt faced exactly this. Winds at 220 kilometers per hour, waves hitting 14 meters. And then an FA-18 Super Hornet broke loose inside the hangar. If that jet slides into a critical system, if it breaches the hull, $19 billion and 5,000 people are in immediate danger. Here's how 40 sailors stopped it. A wave the height of a 5-story building is climbing toward the flight deck of the USS Gerald R. Ford. 15 meters of ocean moving at 240 kilometers per hour. The deck sits 27 meters above the waterline. It shouldn't be possible for water to reach it, but in Category 5 seas, physics stops making sense. This is a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, 332 meters long, 100,000 tons, $13 billion of American naval engineering, on board 5,000 sailors. On the flight deck and in the hangars below, 60 to 90 aircraft worth $70 to $150 million each. Total asset value, somewhere between $17 and $19 billion. And right now, all of it is tilting 11 degrees to starboard as another wave slams into the hull. When storms like this form, commercial vessels run for port. Destroyers and frigates retreat to safe water. Even other military ships avoid this. But aircraft carriers don't have that option. The mission doesn't stop because the ocean is angry. These ships were built for one purpose: unrestricted operation in any ocean, any weather, 365 days a year. Only 11 ships on the planet can do this. All of them are American supercarriers. The challenge isn't just surviving the storm, it's maintaining combat readiness while the ocean is trying to tear the ship apart. Every aircraft must stay secured. The nuclear reactors must stay stable. The 5,000-person crew must remain operational. And the carrier must be ready to launch strikes within 4 to 6 hours if ordered. That's the standard. That's what $13 billion buys you. Right now, on the flight deck, 360 sailors are working in shifts to secure the aircraft. Each FA-18 Super Hornet weighs 27 tons. In these conditions, if one breaks loose, it slides with the force of 40 tons. Enough to crush equipment. Enough to kill. Each plane requires 6 men and 45 minutes to secure with a 16-point tie-down system. Steel cables, 2.5 centimeters thick. That's what stands between control and catastrophe. Below deck, engineering teams are transferring over 500,000 gallons of water between ballast tanks. They're adjusting the center of gravity with centimeter precision. Because at 100,000 tons, even a small miscalculation means the ship rolls past 15 degrees, and past 15 degrees, you're in capsized territory. This isn't theory. This is what's happening right now, somewhere in the Pacific, and you're about to see exactly how they pull it off. The warning comes 12 to 24 hours before the storm hits. Meteorology teams track the system. They feed data to the bridge, wind speed, wave height projections, storm track. The captain makes the call. Heavy Weather Bill is now active. Heavy Weather Bill isn't a suggestion. It's a mandatory protocol developed over decades of carrier operations. Every sailor on board has a designated position. Every piece of equipment has a procedure. And the clock starts immediately. On the flight deck, the choreography begins. Aircraft that can fit go down to the hangar deck on the massive elevators. Everything else gets locked down topside. The tie-down crews move in teams of 6. Each aircraft needs 16 attachment points. Steel cables loop through hard points on the airframe and connect to deck anchors that can hold over 40 tons of lateral force. 45 minutes per aircraft if everything goes perfectly, but nothing goes perfectly when you're racing a Category 4 storm. 60 aircraft, 360 men working in rotating shifts, 8 to 12 hours of non-stop work. And that's just the planes. Every piece of loose equipment disappears. Tow tractors, fuel pods, tool carts, anything that can slide becomes a projectile when the deck tilts 12 degrees. The flight deck crew does something called a FOD walk, foreign object debris walk, a line of sailors, shoulder to shoulder, walking every inch of the deck looking for anything that doesn't belong. A wrench, a bolt, a piece of metal. In heavy seas, a 5-pound object becomes a lethal weapon. While the deck crews work, the engineering teams are fighting a different battle. Deep in the ship, they're managing ballast. Over 500,000 gallons of seawater gets pumped between tanks on opposite sides of the hull. The goal: optimize stability, lower the center of gravity, activate the anti-roll systems. These are massive tanks that shift water to counteract the ship's natural rolling motion. It's active stabilization. The ship is constantly adjusting itself. Then there are the doors. Over 2,000 watertight doors across 18 levels of deck. Every single one gets checked, every seal inspected. Because if green water makes it inside, if tons of seawater flood an interior compartment, the math changes fast. Stability calculations assume the water stays outside. The nuclear reactors get prepped for rapid response. 2 reactors, 260,000 horsepower combined. They need to adjust output instantly as the ship fights through waves. Too little power, you lose directional control. Too much, you slam into the next wave with catastrophic force. And then the briefing happens. 5,000 sailors, all of them told the same thing. The next 48 to 96 hours will test everything you've trained for. Pacific Ocean, 2019. The USS Theodore Roosevelt is 400 kilometers from the nearest land. A Category 4 storm appears on radar with less warning than expected. Winds hit 220 kilometers per hour. Waves are building to 14 meters. The ship is already committed. There's no running from this. On the bridge, the navigation officer calculates the optimal heading. This is a life or death math. If the ship turns perpendicular to the waves, broadside to the storm, the risk of capsizing increases by 400%. If the ship runs parallel to the waves, it can surf. That sounds good until you realize surfing means losing directional control on a 100,000-ton vessel. The correct angle is 30 to 45 degrees into the waves. You take them at an angle. You let the bow cut through instead of fighting the full force head-on. Speed drops from 30 knots to 8 knots, 15 kilometers per hour, slower than a person runs. But this is intentional. Too fast, and the bow launches out of the water and slams down with the force of 8,000 tons hitting concrete. The hull can take it, but the crew inside feels every impact, plus 2 Gs on the way up, -1 G on the descent. Over and over. 40 to 60% of the crew is vomiting within the first 48 hours. Then it happens. Deep in the hangar deck, something goes wrong. An FA-18 Super Hornet breaks loose from its tie-downs. 27 tons of aircraft start sliding. The ship rolls 11 degrees to port. The jet picks up momentum. It slides 12 meters across the deck and collides with another aircraft. Metal screams. Alarms go off. 40 men respond. Damage control teams sprint to the hangar. The ship is still rolling. Every 8 seconds, the deck tilts. They have to resecure a loose fighter jet in conditions where standing upright is almost impossible. Steel cables, backup chains, wedges under the landing gear. They work for 3 hours straight. 3 hours while the storm continues. 3 hours knowing that if this jet breaks loose again and punctures the hull or damages a critical system, this becomes a different kind of emergency. 0 fatalities. $8 million in damage to both aircraft. The jet is immobilized. The hangar is secured. And the Theodore Roosevelt continues its mission. Because that's what these ships do. They don't stop. This is what separates theory from reality. You can engineer for heavy seas, but you can't predict every failure point. Inside the carrier, it doesn't feel like you're on the world's most advanced warship. It feels like you're inside a building that's being shaken by an earthquake that never ends. Corridors tilt. Walls become floors. Floors become walls. Sailors install lifelines, steel cables running down the center of passageways. You clip your harness to the line, and you don't let go. Because when the ship rolls, you're not walking anymore. You're holding on. The galleys shut down hot food service. No fryers, no ovens, nothing that can spill boiling liquid when the deck tilts 12 degrees without warning. Cold meals only, sandwiches, pre-packaged food. The crew eats standing up because sitting at a table doesn't work when the table is sliding. Medical teams distribute anti-nausea medication, but it only helps so much. Sailors work 18 to 24-hour shifts during heavy weather operations. Engineering, navigation, damage control. You can't rotate off when the storm doesn't stop. So you work through the exhaustion. You work through the nausea. You work because 5,000 lives depend on every system functioning. In the Damage Control Center, 300 sensors are monitoring structural integrity in real time. The hull is flexing. Steel bends up to 15 centimeters in extreme wave conditions. That's not a failure, that's expected. The ship is designed to flex. But if the sensors detect bending beyond tolerance, if a weld starts to fail, if a seam begins to separate, the response has to be immediate. 12 rapid response teams are on standby. 8 men per team. They can seal breaches, reinforce compromised sections, reroute critical systems if a compartment floods. Then there are the phenomena you can't predict. Rogue waves. These are waves 2 to 3 times the height of the surrounding sea state. In a storm with 14-meter waves, a rogue can hit 25 to 30 meters. They appear without warning. Radar doesn't always catch them in time. When they hit, the impact force is unreal. Green water. Tons of seawater washing across the flight deck. It's called green water because it's solid ocean. Not spray, not foam. A moving wall of water that weighs thousands of tons. The ship takes it. The crew endures it. 72 hours of this. Some storms last longer. When it's over, the carrier is still operational. But the sailors aren't the same. The physical stress is comparable to combat operations, and the retention rate proves it. 15% fewer sailors re-enlist after heavy weather deployments. Since 1975, 0 American nuclear-powered aircraft carriers have been lost to weather. 0. In that same period, 12 conventional military vessels from various navies were lost in storms. Destroyers, frigates, amphibious ships, gone. The difference isn't luck. It's engineering married to operational protocol, married to human endurance. A carrier strike group built around a Nimitz or Ford-class supercarrier can operate 365 days per year. Conventional naval forces operate effectively 280 to 300 days per year. Weather creates gaps, windows where ships must retreat, where presence cannot be guaranteed. That 65 to 85-day difference is the margin that changes global power projection. When the United States positions a carrier off the coast of a contested region, adversaries know it's not leaving because of a storm. They can't wait out the weather. They can't plan around seasonal windows. The carrier is there. It stays there. And it remains capable of launching strikes with 4 to 6 hours notice, regardless of sea state. That's the strategic value of heavy weather capability. $13 billion per ship, 11 carriers in active service, that's $143 billion in hulls alone. Then add the aircraft, the escorts, the support vessels, the infrastructure. And what you're buying is permanent presence, uninterrupted power projection, the ability to be anywhere, anytime, regardless of what nature throws at you. But here's what the budget briefings don't talk about. The cost to the crew. Sailors who spend 6 to 9 months at sea, who endure 48 to 96-hour stretches of heavy weather operations where sleep becomes a luxury and standing upright becomes a challenge, who watch waves taller than buildings slam into the ship and trust that the engineering will hold, who secure billion-dollar aircraft in hurricane-force winds knowing that one mistake kills people. Retention rates drop 15% after these deployments. That's the human cost. That's what maintaining 365-day operational capability actually requires. Not just steel and nuclear reactors and advanced technology, people willing to endure conditions most humans will never experience. This is why only 11 ships in the world can do this. Not because the technology is impossible to replicate, but because the combination of engineering excellence, operational doctrine, and human resilience required to execute heavy weather operations at this level is something only the U.S. Navy has mastered over decades. When you see an aircraft carrier on the news, remember this. It's not just floating there. It's fighting every single day. If you made it this far, you're serious about understanding military operations at the level most people never see. This channel breaks down real tactics, real engineering, real strategic doctrine. No hype, just what actually happens when the mission demands perfection. Subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown. Hit the bell because YouTube doesn't show you everything. And drop a comment telling me what naval operation you want explained next. Let's go.